Welcome to today's Head to Toe Healing Live. Head to Toe Healing was created by Dr. Kevin Reese. He utilizes 3 macro methods to address the whole body: the musculoskeletal system, nutrition, and mindfulness. In our membership, our members utilize these 3 methods. It helps them get out of chronic pain, regain their health by getting their body in a position where it can start healing itself the way it was designed to. My name is Coach Karen, and today we're going to be talking with our panel of specialists about erectile dysfunction, ED. With that, many men, unfortunately, have the inability to keep an erection sufficient to provide satisfactory sexual experience. So today we're going to dive into the topic with Coach Ryan, Coach Gingy, and Coach Sean. Ryan, I wanted to start with you with ED. What are your thoughts about why it happens and why it affects so many men today?
Well, thank you for that. There's multiple reasons why it can happen. And actually, in my experience, the majority of cases that I've dealt with have actually been mostly psychological. So Gingy's going to have a lot to say about this. And I actually have some to chime in on the psychological aspect as well. But when we're looking for physical problems, many of them are connected to impotence. Okay, and first of all, remember that any chronic disease is going to stress the person out. This is not just men, but women as well, can very suddenly lose interest in quite a lot of things in life when they're trying to deal with a health problem. Basically, the health problem can take over and cause what we call health anxiety, right? Where it stops you basically from enjoying things in life until the obsession with this fixing this problem is satisfied, which usually is not satisfied, by the way, just saying. So any illness, any serious illness, any disease diagnosis that could, of course, cause erectile dysfunction and, sexual dysfunction in both men and women, and that's pretty understandable, which is also largely a mindfulness thing, right? It's stress caused by another disease, even if the disease itself didn't cause the ED. But of course, the man, just like a woman, they could have low thyroid, low blood pressure, adrenal exhaustion, very common. We've talked about all these things at length. Hypoglycemia, we just talked about that a couple of weeks ago. Post-surgical damage, especially in the cases of prostate surgery. Erectile dysfunction is very, very common after prostate surgery. Each one of these situations is different, but when it comes to the low blood sugar, low blood pressure, hypothyroid, all that is low functioning metabolic factors, right? So I would just take all those. We would use all the 90 essential nutrients and we would focus on whichever category jumps out, right? Do they have symptoms of low blood sugar or hypothyroidism or both? That would be the extra support that we would use on top of the 90 essential nutrients. Obviously, we'd get them off all the bad foods. And so those physical conditions are pretty obvious, especially just by a questionnaire. You'll be able to see pretty clearly if they fall into the category of thyroid or blood sugar. Sometimes it's not so obvious and the symptoms overlap a lot. In that case, once again, I would just use the 90 essential nutrients and probably boost a few others depending on the circumstances. Almost certainly iodine is going to get boosted. Almost certainly manganese and zinc will be boosted as well. I don't think you should just go out and buy iodine and manganese and zinc. I'm just saying that if there were 3 most important minerals for erectile dysfunction, manganese deficiency has definitely been proven to cause ED in many animal experiments. And zinc is critical to the overall function of the reproductive system and every organ in the body, not just the brain and the heart, but also testicles, ovaries. Again, whether men or women, zinc has a lot to do with it, sexual function. And of course, it could just be a circulation problem. And even though that one is the most obvious one, to me, it's not the most common. And we probably all know that people with blood sugar problems, especially diabetes, are prone to circulation problems. Basically, the circulation problems are part of the same cluster of the metabolic syndrome. As the metabolic syndrome gets worse, you may only have one thing to begin with. Maybe it's high blood sugar. Quite quickly, or within a few years, you're probably going to have high blood cholesterol, right? Probably high blood pressure, probably circulation issues. This is why diabetics go blind and why they have kidney problems and why they get limbs amputated for gangrene, right? Circulation problem. Well, obviously, the penis is a giant vein. So, well, not a giant vein, it's a vein. And so if you have a circulation problem, it can affect that as well.
Thank you for that. Coach Sean.
the circulation problem is fixable. Just saying, if it's a circulation problem, that one's actually relatively easy.
Fantastic. That's going to be good news to many men out there. Coach Sean, posture alignment therapy, it really makes a difference for chronic issues. Could there be impingements in a man's body that could affect his ability to get an erection?
Yeah, well, one of the main leading drivers for ED would be a sedentary lifestyle. So what people are developing, that sitting posture, most of those cases that have a sitting posture always have, like, I wouldn't say always, let me just say, as a high percentage of those cases that develop the sitting posture would always follow with a some form of ED. And so if you can imagine, when you're sitting down, that's one of the positions where you're leading to the most restrictive in terms of venous blood flow, nerve pathway compression, and lymphatic flow. And so if you're blocking all of that by sitting down hours in and hours out in a day, then you're going to cause a lot of restriction. You're going to cause a lot of nutrients not to get to the right areas. You're going to cause a lot of lymph to not drain from that area, and a lot of nerve compression. So a lot of organs are not able to communicate with itself or other organs. And so that would be that main problem of just sitting too much. And so trying to get more active throughout the day is one of those first things that you should consider to start reversing this problem for the better. Of course, posture alignment therapy would work at realigning the bones and muscles to where it works for or with your body circulation and your nerve pathways, impinging those nerves. But it's going to continue to get worse if you don't fix the habit of a sedentary lifestyle.
Thank you. Coach Gingy, from a mindfulness perspective, when a man gets ED, I would imagine that it just really interferes with his confidence and makes it more difficult as time goes on. How could his mind be playing a part in this?
Well, it's one of those situations that kind of snowballs on itself. I think I'm probably going to say what most people are thinking. One of the biggest contributing factors mentally to erectile dysfunction is overstimulation. So with the vast internet at our fingertips at any given moment of the day, men are quite often going and looking at imagery that is going to be more stimulating mentally than anything they engage with in real life. So when it comes time for actual intimacy with another human being, it's not quite as stimulating mentally as a computer screen, where you can literally just go like girl to girl or scene to scene or situation to situation and just stay continually, stimulated mentally. So that's a big one. I would say that's more so for the younger generations, kids that are in their teens and their 20s primarily. But I mean, this happens all the way up the chain at every age group of men. So some of the other things that get in the way are stress. I would say if a man is distracted either by work or by an argument, or is in a high stress state and focusing on a situation or something else that's going on, it's very, very easy to kind of put sexual things off to the side. And that doesn't become the priority in a situation that he's got to actually, work something out. So those are a few big ones. I wrote a little list here when I was preparing for the call. A lot of guys, they tend to, how should I put this? To cope or avoid. A lot of people do this. It's not just men, but one of the things that humans do is we try to avoid the problem by coping with something else. And it's funny, you do that and you feel better in the moment. So like if you go and you have a couple of drinks and you're like, well, now I feel like I could get in the mood. Well, that tells you that there's a whole lot of mental activity going on that gets in the way of intimacy with another person. and that it may just be quieting down the mind. But some other people, they'll have a couple of drinks and it completely turns them off. They won't be able to engage intimately with somebody else. Um, one of the issues in this is that once you become engaged with another person like this, it almost makes you hyper aware in the moment. So if you have any self-depreciating thoughts or beliefs, or if you're nervous about performance, or if this happened one time 5 years ago and you're worried it might happen again, all of these imaginatory situations, they can very easily take you out of the moment and out of your body and into the head. And that will literally redirect blood flow the wrong direction. So it's a thing where, I mean, let's see, most guys would probably call that like I'm getting in my head too much or I'm overthinking something. There's so many different ways that the mind can kind of detract away from the body or away from the moment. And um, geez, I could go probably on and on and on and on, but I think that's probably a good place to get started. So arguments, stress, distractions, being overstimulated, you know, ideally you're just kind of in your groove, in your routine. There's intimacy, there's closeness, and it's kind of a spur of the moment thing, and you just go with the flow. That's the most effective way at avoiding erectile dysfunction as far as the mindfulness perspective. Like Ryan said, there's a ton of other nutrients that are involved. With Sean, there's a ton of other, flow and circulatory issues that can easily come in the way. And so it is also good to be mindful of the contributing factors so that you're not doing everything right mentally, but you're just really low on nutrients, or you're sitting on a lazy boy for 4 hours a night and just creating pressure there and lack of circulation. So yeah, big topic, big conversation. I think I'll start there and leave it there.
Thank you, Genji, for that. Coach Ryan, in preparing for today's call, I noticed, one of the topics that came up when I was researching, it says some medications treat erectile dysfunction by increasing blood flow, while testosterone is a hormone that influences libido and is involved with underlying causes of the erectile dysfunction. From a natural approach, how could both of these concerns be addressed?
Well, first of all, that's a good point that I should have mentioned, that many drugs can cause circulation problems and ED itself. It'll say on the package. And if you looked up a list of drugs that can potentially cause ED, it's probably going to be a long list. So circulatory drugs, unless they're using niacin, which sometimes they do use niacin, usually they're just blocking an enzyme. Almost every drug just blocks some enzyme, so it doesn't actually support circulatory function. It will be blocking something that interferes with circulation, and that could get an improvement. It could. And the testosterone, yeah. I mean, obviously, if you're low on testosterone and you inject testosterone in, then sure, that should help your libido. But we're always trying to get to the root cause. So putting in the testosterone just doesn't identify the root cause, and it doesn't do anything about the root cause. Why is the testosterone low? There's plenty of old men in their 80s and 90s that have been recorded with the testosterone of a healthy 30-year-old, right? So there's no physical reason why a man should have low testosterone, and that's all the way up to a long and natural death, right? 100 years old even. You could have healthy, not only healthy testosterone, but a healthy sex life as well. Interestingly, father children well into seniorhood. So yeah, you inject testosterone, it'll probably help, but it doesn't fix the reason for the low testosterone in the first place.
All right. Coach Sean, you brought this up a little bit already, but lack of exercise is a contributing factor to ED. How can PAT really help a man support his body in a different way? A lot of times they're going to the gym, they take the testosterone, they want to build up the muscle mass, but if they have dysfunction in the body, it may be counterintuitive. So how can PAT, posture alignment therapy, help them?
Yeah, so exercise and, any type of posture dysfunction, really. Like if you have a pain in your body or you can't walk right, or I don't know, any type of postural dysfunction it's not just the pain that's causing the problem. The area in which the pain is in, whatever is causing that pain, is what's causing more of the problem because it's a misalignment. A misalignment is causing the pain. Remember when I say like very rarely is the symptom, the site of the pain ever the actual source. And so there's some misalignment somewhere causing the pain. And through that misalignment, it's causing what Dr. Reese says, kinks in the hose. And so think about our, I don't know, the system of water that we get. If the city might have enough water to get through the whole city, but if there is an impingement anywhere in that system, then that means a neighborhood is not going to get water. Now, does that point to the city not having enough water for that neighborhood? No, it's an impingement that's causing that issue. So the same thing is happening in your body, to where even if you work out, even if you're living that active lifestyle, you could still have active misalignments that are causing kinks in the hose that are either causing some type of nerve impingement, some type of lymphatic blockage, or some type of vein cardiovascular blockage. And so it's not just about working out, being in an active lifestyle. One thing I loved is Dr. Reese always said, you want to straighten before you strengthen. Because even if you're strengthening, it could be that misalignment that you have, it's continuing to strengthen with your body. And so it's going to you have a forward head, it's going to grow into a big, strong forward head. And it was never corrected. The habit was never corrected. And so if you can't just go at it, I'm going to be active and I'm going to work out and all of that stuff. You want to straighten first. You want to get into some type of posture alignment therapy to straighten, to address the issues, essentially. And so it's always going to come from like kinks in the hose. That's what's going to be a problem for the rest of your body. And that's when posture alignment therapy starts to seep into mindfulness and nutrition, because if the body is not aligned correctly, if the kinks in the hoses persist, then that means nutrients aren't able to get to certain organs. That means lymph is not able to drain from certain areas. And that means certain nerve impingements could be causing a lot of pain or bodily dysfunctions, like nerve damage or some type of twitch or tremor, or the list can go on. It's a lot that nerve impingement can do to your body. That's where the headaches come from, tinnitus. It's a lot of things. And so that all comes from posture.
Thank you for that. We're going to pop over and answer a few questions before we continue our topic. Mario's asking a nutritional question for Coach Ryan. Low ferritin and iron, anything to do to support that?
Yeah, you need to have strong stomach acid to be able to absorb iron and its cofactors. Remember that anemia can be caused by several B vitamin deficiencies and other nutrient deficiencies, but it can also impact the iron because they're cofactors with each other. So you need strong stomach acid to absorb all of those nutrients, basically. And to me, that's the number one reason why we see anemia. And that's proven to me by the fact that most people who come to us with anemia either are already on an iron supplement or they've taken it in the past and it hasn't worked. So clearly it's not iron deficiency, or you're not absorbing the iron because you need a strong stomach acid to absorb the iron. It's pretty simple. We don't use iron supplements. We don't sell iron supplements. I've never seen it where an iron supplement was necessary, because we fix the digestion, fix the stomach acid, especially by using enough salt and helping people get off of proton pump inhibitors or Tums, or if they're taking any agent that lowers their stomach acid. You got to know that is probably the prime cause, the root cause of the anemia, because you need to be able to absorb it.
Thank you for addressing that. Let's go on to the next question. We have one from Janelle. Janelle says, I heard Dr. Reese talking about varicose veins and brain aneurysms. This happened to me. Do I have a chance of having a second aneurysm? I do still have varicose veins. Ryan, do you have any thoughts about those two conditions?
Well, yeah, I don't mean to be doomsday here, but yeah, of course, there's the possibility of a second aneurysm. And we can't guarantee that an aneurysm can be reversed, but it's possible to. There's a chance of it reversing if you take all the nutrients that you need for the connective tissue And yeah, varicose veins and aneurysms, they're basically the same deficiency because it's a connective tissue problem. Right, with the aneurysm, the connective tissue weakens around the vein, and then a little bulge pops out of it, like a balloon. You squeeze a balloon, and a bulge comes out the other side. That's what's going on with an aneurysm. And of course, if that bursts, ruptured aneurysm, that is most likely deadly, or with severe long-term consequences like paralysis, brain damage and stuff like that. So it's a huge, huge, huge problem, yes. But I would do all 90 essential nutrients. I would do extra copper and selenium, extra collagen, or some form of connective tissue. I usually use 2 at a time, either a gelatin glucosamine mixture or MSM or collagen peptides. If you're super serious, you could use all 3 of those. And, I just said those out loud. You can go and buy those ingredients out loud. That doesn't give you the 90 essential nutrients, but I would definitely get started on some kind of connective tissue support immediately. And if you were in the program with us, I would be running you through a vitamin C flush, because vitamin C is one of the major nutrients involved in connective tissue. And the flush is basically just the highest doses that you can tolerate. It's a protocol that we have. And like I said, all 90 essential nutrients and just a bit extra of some of the key nutrients for connective tissue.
Thank you, Ryan. Another question here from Nadia. She was replying to our comment in the chat saying, are you ready to reverse your symptoms? So she says she's ready to reverse the cause rather than the symptoms. Could you explain why we utilize people's symptoms to help them to reverse their chronic conditions and also help them get out of pain?
Well, just because the symptoms are the most reliable thing that we have, right? Blood work is not very helpful in many, many cases. Sometimes the problem is obvious on blood work, but vast majority of cases it's not. I'm a fan of hair analysis and even comprehensive stool analysis, and both can be quite confusing and not line up with their symptoms, right? So basically every type of test has pros and cons, and none of them are going to be 100% reliable. So what do we have that's reliable? It's your symptoms, unless you're lying, right? As long as you're being open and honest with yourself and hopefully paying attention to how you've changed. This is also why we do the symptom score several times. And basically every time I'll talk to a member, I'll go right up to the top, ask them about the symptoms that they came in with, right? Okay, 12 of those things are gone. Okay, we got 3 left, right? And we're not using like the mainstream medical approach where you have blood pressure, we give you a blood pressure drug or something like that. It doesn't even really work that way with herbs and with nutrients. I'll always use the baseline 90 essential nutrients, always first focusing on digestion so their system can even tolerate that. And only then we'll start to look at boosting specific nutrients, usually for short periods of time. Based on what? Based on the symptoms. If it was based on your blood work, we're shooting in the dark for the most part, right? But when it's based on your symptoms, are you sleeping correctly? No. Okay, that's something that's very easy to focus on and track, right? Next week, how you sleeping? Still the same. Okay, got to do something different. Next week, how you sleeping, but doing a little bit better. Okay, gonna keep going in that direction, right? Your symptoms are the main way that we guide this whole thing. A lot of people don't even have formal diagnoses, or their diagnoses are they're on the threshold, right? The doctor says, don't worry about your thyroid until it gets a little bit better. Come back next year, right? But if they have symptoms that would put them in the thyroid category, we're going to act on that right away, regardless of what their blood work says. Blood work could say it's perfectly fine. We see that all the time. I don't care. Care about your symptoms, right? What do you care about as a person? Do you care about the numbers on the chart, or do you care about how you feel?
Well, and the amazing part about it is when people get in the membership, every 4 months they do a new symptom score with us. And with that, it happens every time. Their symptoms go from here to here to here, and they just gradually start to drop off and they feel better. The bottom line is about feeling better. So if you're curious about head to toe healing, go to Dr. Kevin Reese and check out the website. Look for the book tab first. You want to get these 2 books, the red book and the green book, to start to see if head to toe healing is for you. And if you resonate with our philosophy and how we approach getting your body in the right position where it can heal itself, it's much different than the mainstream approach. But if you're looking for results, check that out on our website too, because we have many people that have left testimonies and just great results that they have had through our process. So check it out, drkevinreese.com. And if you have other questions, please drop them in the chat. Actually, one more question, Coach Ryan. This has come up numerous times when I've talked to people when they've reached out to our organization. Many people have expressed that they have the herpes virus. And one individual that I spoke to, they were in chronic pain all the time for years and years. And also just it affects them emotionally so much. Is there a natural approach that can help turn that around and get their body back in a position where they can feel good again and function in life in a regular manner and just enjoy it?
So what I'm about to say might be shocking to this person. So when it comes to herpes, the biggest impact that I've seen it have on people is psychological. How could that be? Because it's a fake disease, as I call it. Almost everyone who's an adult in the Western world has herpes. And that's in big quotes there, has herpes. At least you have herpes antibodies. The vast majority of those people, probably everybody watching this, right? Close to everybody watching this, all of us in the room, we probably have herpes antibodies, but we don't have symptoms. We don't have warts. We don't have any, urinary problems. So what's the deal? We all have it, but we don't all have the symptoms. Who has the symptoms? People with a weak immune system. I'm pretty firmly on the terrain theory side of things when it comes to viruses, meaning I do not believe that viruses are pathogenic agents. They're not like bacteria or something that can infect you. They are a byproduct, a waste product of immune activity in the body, at least to my understanding. But that's what the terrain theorists generally believe. And I know some people in this business who still use the language that like you have a virus. And we see people come in all the time saying, I have herpes or I have Epstein-Barr or something like that. And to me, all that means is they have a weak immune system. What has been misinterpreted as a virus, and by the way, viruses have never been proven to even exist, let alone to be transmissible. And that's after 150 years of trying to transmit them. So it's a complete hoax. It's a complete scam. Every single virus you've ever heard about is fake. It's completely made up. There's no proof that they ever existed. There's no proof that they spread. What there is proof of is antibody activity and cellular debris, basically. You can't even really see a virus. It's too small. So it looks like cellular debris, and that's all we have. The extreme terrain theorists will go as far as to say that there are organisms all over the world and all throughout your body that actually change form depending on the terrain, right? So it might be Candida one moment, and then you change the terrain, and now it might be a beneficial bacteria. Now, I'm not quite there yet, but I do know that I don't have to have the belief in viruses in order to help somebody, right? If they have symptoms like warts are going to be the most obvious one, or if they have burning urination or anything like that, to me, I'm just going to go full throttle into supporting the immune system. And that actually means using some antimicrobial herbs, which in the terrain theory fits into this because those are basically just immune supporting herbs. Rather than killing a fake virus, they're just supporting the immune system. So I would use all 90 essential nutrients. Chances are we would do an antimicrobial protocol. Chances are we would start with a digestion protocol that's just a bit skewed to the antimicrobial and see how they go. And back to that last question, what are we going to gauge? We're going to gauge the symptoms because the test is always going to say that you have herpes, right? But it will mean nothing, just like it means nothing to the vast majority of people who don't have symptoms. As long as we can get your immune system up and running properly, you're not going to have warts. They'll go away, and whatever other symptoms that you do have will go away. Now, I said earlier that the only real symptom I've ever seen from this, other than warts, which again, I could just say warts are from a weak immune system. We see warts, we can get rid of warts. It means not much of anything to me. But the psychological toll, I feel for you because you've been told that you have this transmissible, dirty thing, right? And you feel bad about it. You feel like you got to tell your partners about it before you have them. Well, you can't transmit it to them unless they have a weak immune system too. And even then, you're not transmitting it really. I mean, there's this gets deeper than I want to go here. But in general, the only STDs that can really be passed around are bacterial infections, right? If you have bacteria in your lower regions and you bump those up against somebody else's lower regions, you can get a bacterial transfer. But it doesn't work that way with virus. And again, that's after more than 100 years of trying to do so. So the psychological toll has been given to you by the media, by the movies, culture, right? All this has put ideas into your head that you can transmit it and that you're stuck with it for life and everything. It's not true. You'll be stuck with the antibodies, but so what? You have chickenpox antibodies right now. It doesn't affect your life, right? It means that your immune system was working properly at that time. It identified a threat. It created an antibody to it. That's supposed to mean that that's a good thing, right? But they use now antibodies to determine whether or not you have a problem. And that's they did that with AIDS too. They flipped the switch into AIDS. They changed how you diagnose a so-called viral problem. And that's carried on ever since AIDS. You know, the whole situation has been turned on its head. And they can say that you have a virus for anything, use it as an excuse for anything, right? The Epstein-Barr and stuff, to me, that's mostly just an excuse. What are you going to do about it? Well, what are we going to do about it is support the immune system, right? Whereas the mainstream medical world basically suppresses the immune system. And it works somewhat to a degree, a little bit, but it causes massive side effects. So yeah, this is not a problem that you're stuck with. The psychological toll, blame the media, blame your doctor for reinforcing this and the culture at large, but you are not a carrier of anything. You have cellular debris and antibodies that practically all adults in the Western world have, and you can get rid of any symptoms that you have.
Thank you for that explanation. Coach Gingy, I want to pop over and have you add into this topic a little bit, because obviously when somebody has that situation, they're under a great deal of stress, and then it probably ignites it even more. How can mindfulness, that approach, help them when they're dealing with herpes?
Well, I was going to say, what's one of the main ways that people reduce their immune system, or at least their immune function? Stress. Everyone who's ever been stressed out, doing some big event or deadlines at work or a stressful relationship, eventually they feel run down and they end up with a cold or something. And so obviously, mentally, you can get yourself psychologically into a lowered immune system. And then I would say, imagine the psychological and emotional toll that that gets waged or taken on your system when the doctor tells you you have this virus, and there's a huge amount of embarrassment that comes along with that. There's a huge amount of guilt for maybe people that you've interacted with. You thinking I may have given it to them. There's an enormous psychological, mental and emotional load that gets absorbed in even just hearing those statements from a medical professional. So, it's kind of like the same phenomena that happens when a doctor tells somebody that they're going to die in 6.5 months, and exactly 6.5 months to the day that person drops dead. It's because of what we would call the placebo effect. This is why we have double-blind and triple-blind studies scientifically, is because we know the impact that psychology plays on test results. And then yet the doctors go in there and say, you have this disease, or you're going to die in this time, or if you don't, you're going to continue to get sicker if you don't do everything that I say. There's this push of fear that happens that affects the person's psychology that then makes the results of whatever they're saying more likely. And herpes is a great example. They've never been able to isolate and get a hold of and identify an actual virus or measure the viral load like they talk about. We just assume that that's the case based off of the evidence that they have, like antibodies or cellular debris. So if you start taking the information and then making conclusions, you want to make sure that those conclusions are not going to psychologically affect the results of what's going to come. They may say something like, well, we haven't seen this turn around before, as opposed to this isn't going to turn around for you. So if herpes is really just more about the immune system, then you want to make sure you take care of the immune system. You want to make sure that you stay mentally and emotionally calm. You want to make sure that you're nurturing yourself with nutrients and things you enjoy, and some downtime, some peaceful time, pray, meditate, whatever it is. Those types of things will enrich you in your mental and emotional state and overall immune system function. And again, we talk about this probably every week. There's a distinction between the sympathetic and parasympathetic sides of the nervous system. And you could boil this down to the layperson language to say that there's fight or flight and there's rest and restore. So your brain uses the nervous system and the five senses to identify its environment and if there's any threats. If it finds anything dangerous, like a doctor telling you that you have this irreversible disease, then it's going to activate the fight or flight response. And so long as that mode of the immune system is activated, your immune system is going to be suppressed. Other things are going to be heightened. You're going to increase inflammation. You're going to turn off digestion and absorption of nutrients and the whole nine. The scales tip. And that is not at all conducive for trying to reverse herpes, trying to reverse any type of disease. I mean, we can all go all the way back to the initial conversation here of ED. Try being stressed out or worried that you're going to die and get an erection at the same time. It's not going to work. So you have to be able to calm down mentally and emotionally in order for these things to actually reverse. And so, I mean, it doesn't take that much to boost the immune system. And if the doctors are saying it's irreversible to reverse herpes, you're like, okay, well, let me calm my mind, calm my heart. Let me do a little bit of nutrition. Let me do a little bit of healthy eating. Let me get off some of the poor four foods and just see what happens to your immune system and your overall function. And okay, one more little hint here. A massive majority of your immune system is in your gut. So if you can repair your gut, get your gut healthy, do some of the other things, and then just see, do your symptoms increase or decrease? Do you get more breakouts or less breakouts? Now, I actually have a friend of mine that had herpes, as she thought, for many, many, many years. And then one day she realized that she hadn't had one in like 4 or 5 years, a breakout, like symptoms. And she went back to the doctor and the doctor ran the same tests. And he's like, nope, you don't have herpes anymore. I said, well, what do you mean? You told me I had it. You tested for the virus, and now you're telling me that it's gone, but you also told me it's irreversible. What's going on? He goes, I don't know. I can just tell you what the data says that's coming out of the test machines. So that is a very, like, if there is some anecdotal evidence that I could offer here, is that there are people like this all the time that all of a sudden have no more symptoms of a irreversible disease, and they go back and get tested and they no longer have it anymore. There's incongruencies here with that statement that it's irreversible or you're going to have it for life. Well, there's nothing you can do about it. Like if you adopt that belief, it's going to make it more likely that you'll never recover. But if you keep an open mind and you stay optimistic, like, well, all they said is that they don't have the answer for me. So let me go find someone who does have the answer. Maybe I can find someone who has seen herpes reversed or has seen ED reversed or has seen anything else reversed. Let me work with them and see if I'm as fortunate as the other people they've worked with. And that's at least going to keep you in a better mental and emotional state, thinking that there's a chance, as opposed to just resigning, being resigned to an apathetic life. Just, okay, whatever, just nothing you can do for poor old me. That's what Dr. Reese refers to as the victim-oriented thinking. So vastly important. Mindfulness, it plays a big role in not just herpes, but every single disease that we see out there.
Thank you, Genji. Coach Ryan, a couple more comments here in the chat. And actually the individual that I spoke with a few weeks back, they had really severe digestive issues, by the way. Couple comments here. An individual saying, do you even know what herpes is though? It doesn't have anything to do with warts. I never kissed my daughter. I'm petrified about passing this hell on to her. The herpes virus can be activated by the sun, heat, cold, chocolate, foods with arginine, stress, exercise, combined with the other problems that I have and limitations. What's left for me? How would you respond?
It sounds like food allergies to me. And anytime that there's any sensitivity to the sun, like sun allergy, or you get a rash or something in the sun, or you sunburn really easily, anything like that, to me, that's going to be a fatty nutrient imbalance. And if she doesn't have warts, that's great. But she said, I don't want to pass this hell on to my daughter. What hell? A test? By the way, a dodgy test too, as Gingy was saying, whether they're using PCR or ELISA or anything, all of these tests are dodgy. They are always to be taken with a grain of salt regardless. But if you don't have warts, you don't have obvious symptoms, then what's the problem here, right? My job is to go on symptoms and help you get better. If you don't have any symptoms, then I would say, well, why are we worrying about it? But what she said there, like I said, sounds like a food intolerance, sounds like a digestion problem. And I don't know what other symptoms that she has, but surely that would be the focal point of where we would start.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's look back to our initial conversation about erectile dysfunction and ED. A lot of times, Ryan, men are thought the only option is synthetic medication. In researching that, it sounds like a lot of times that comes with not so pleasant side effects like headaches, flushing, nasal congestion, indigestion, runny nose, back aches, muscle pains, dizziness. Are there natural options to avoid those sort of adverse effects?
Well, of course. And like I said, the very first thing that we would do is look at what other symptoms they have. I would be asking about, I would just ask a bunch of different questions or give them a questionnaire that, based on those answers, would first of all give me an idea. It usually does. You can just look at the symptoms and be like, okay, thyroid, blood sugar. Okay. Again, are they overweight too? You know, how's their sleep? There's all types of questions that I could follow up with to ask to narrow it down to see if it is clearly blood sugar or thyroid. Those would be the two main categories that I'm looking at here when we're talking about the metabolism. And so, like I said, sometimes it's not that obvious and there's a blend of both types of symptoms that happens. I would still say, so what? We would still start with the 90. I would still use extra iodine, probably lean towards the thyroid regardless. Probably also put some extra blood sugar support in. So again, it would depend on the situation. You know, you can't just come in and say, I have ED. I'm going to hit you with 25 more questions, right? Just to put you in a category. And if I can't put you in a category, which is very rare, let's say that was the only symptom, fine. I'll use all 90 essential nutrients and we'll go heavy into the mindfulness because chances are that's actually the cause, is the mindfulness. It's the brain. Like I said at the beginning, the majority of cases of ED I've ever seen have been mental, even if they had other health problems, And obviously, this is especially obvious if the performance problem is really only with the existing partner, right? Maybe they still get excited in the morning. Maybe they still get excited about the new neighbor girl or something, right? I've seen plenty of cases, not plenty, don't let me get ahead of myself. I've seen a handful of cases where a breakup or an affair, and I'm not condoning this, but I'm saying they were able to perform as soon as they broke up, found somebody new, they're all excited all over again. Or they had an affair with someone that they were excited about. I'm just saying that is... This is the most common situation that I've seen. It's been mostly relationship, and most of the people I deal with do have other health problems. And so, like I said before, they are stressed about that problem too. It just adds on to the chronic stress that is the average life in the modern world here. We expect chronic stress. And of course, ED can just be caused by stress itself. So like I said, it's primarily psychological, at least in the cases that I've seen. I have seen cases where they were purely physical, and like a circulation protocol or a thyroid protocol or something fixed it. But most of the time it is somewhat, at least partially psychological. But I would say almost every time it's at least partially psychological.
On that note, Coach Gingy, on the emotional side of things with ED, a lot of times it's a performance issue and some men avoid sex. Can this create it creates feelings of alienation and also can fracture relationships. Are there any mindfulness tips that you can share that would help keep communication open to support the relationships?
Yeah. I mean, this, like I said at the very beginning, the first thing I said is that it's a situation that kind of snowballs in and on itself. And so if the man starts to have ED and maybe he has one specific encounter that he was like, I don't know, this has never happened before. Every guy has the one time that it didn't work out the way it usually does. And then he now gets in his head and starts worrying that it's going to happen again. And then the woman he's with maybe starts to feel like he's not attracted to her anymore. Or why is he avoiding sex? Maybe he doesn't like me. And then all of a sudden she gets nervous. She starts getting in her head about stuff. And she starts treating him differently, which makes him think like, well, maybe she doesn't like me anymore. And because maybe she's judging me because of the one event that happened. And then he starts to load up. And this whole snowball back and forth exchange can kind of just make things worse. That's why I kind of brought in like the whole alcohol thing. If there's a time where, like, I know a handful of people that have done this, they go out and have a couple drinks of whatever it is, and then all of a sudden they can perform again. That tells me that it's absolutely psychological, because the booze is going to inhibit the, I don't even know what cortex, the prefrontal cortex or whatever it is. It's going to inhibit the thinking part of the mind, the rational logical functions. And if you're not up here thinking about, well, what if she thinks this and what if she thinks that, and oh, by that time that happened, you're going to be less up here and more down here. And so that would, to me, be the mindfulness solution. As much as possible, try to not indulge in those thoughts. If they come up, push them away. We have practices for that inside the membership, where we actually work with the thoughts as they come up so that they stop coming up. And as you kind of move through and you get to a place where you can like not have these thoughts running all the time, not hijacking the situation, then you can actually be there and engage. And if you can have an open and honest conversation with your spouse in a way that like she can support you and say, "Oh, that must be really embarrassing. Well, don't worry about me. Like, I love you no matter what happens in the bedroom." That type of unconditional support literally takes the pressure off of a man, and then that pressure is not an added trigger. There's this phenomenon called trigger stacking. And the first trigger may be, okay, he's really worried about, is this happening again? Then the second trigger may be like, well, this is a really important night. It's our anniversary. I need to perform. And then the third trigger is the spouse is like, well, why aren't you attracted to me anymore? And now he's got to, and so all these different triggers can stack to the point where it becomes overwhelming. And you literally kind of have to dig back through and get back to the base of it. And if you have a spouse who's unconditional with you, it goes a long, long way, because now all those other triggers kind of go away. If you don't perform, it's not going to ruin the night. Now you can just focus on the performance and the issue at hand. And if you do find yourself, like, I know a lot of guys, if there's problems in the relationship, they go to their phone, they go to their screens to solve it, or to feel whatever they're trying to feel. And if that has all at all become habitual, meaning like you do it more than once a week, which most guys do, that is going to desensitize you to a degree. If you watch a lot of movies, if you watch a lot of Instagram, if you watch a lot of whatever, even commercials, there's sexual solicitation basically everywhere. And for a man who's very visual, which most men are, every single time you're visually indulging in something like that, it's going to make you less likely to be aroused by something in real life, because everything on social media, everything on movies, everything on commercials is curated, and it's as prettied up as it possibly could be. And so you're getting the best of the best, the flashy of the flashiest. It'd be like spending a whole week in a Ferrari car lot and then going to a Honda lot and being like, all this stuff here sucks, where you may have loved Hondas beforehand. So if you do notice that there's some desensitization going on, cleanse it. There's all kinds of practices that guys will do. Well, there's not guys, but people in general, like they'll do a digital detox, I think is one of the terms. Basically, get off your screens, go outside, get some light in your eyes, try to unplug for a little bit. Don't indulge in the things that you have been indulging in. Try to increase your sensitivity to something. It's like if you don't drink alcohol for a whole month and then you have one drink, it's going to be way more, your tolerance has gone way down. It's going to be way more impactful or effective on your system than if you had been drinking every single day the entire month. I don't know why I keep going to the alcohol reference, but this is to say, try to take some time off of the things that stimulate you mentally, so that when you do engage intimately with somebody that you actually want to engage intimately with, when you actually have loving, connected feelings with, then you're actually able to get aroused, because the threshold has dropped to the point where anything will get you into that zone. I can't stress how important that part of it is, because if it's not, if it's not porn, then it's over here in movies, or it's over here in Instagram, or, it's everyday life. How many guys I see turning their heads at women as they walk down the road? Like, it's ridiculous. You got to turn that off and just be a normal human for a little while and not be triggered mentally like that. Because, like, again, the more that you do that, the more desensitized you're going to become, and that's probably the biggest issue.
Thank you, Genji. A couple more questions here in the chat from Angie. How do you reverse arterial plaque, especially when you've been in the menopausal transition? Ryan?
Many nutrients are known to bind to the fats and minerals in plaque and remove them. They're called chelators. One of the most popular ones is vitamin C, which can be done in very high doses, and it can be done intravenously or orally or in liposomal form. And that is one of the things that we would do. We would use all 90 essential nutrients because, as I mentioned, there's several nutrients that are involved in chelation, but most of them you can't megadose, whereas you can megadose vitamin C to bowel tolerance, and even higher than that if you do it intravenously. Chelation therapy is known to help with plaque buildup, but particularly in the small vessels is where the chelation, I'm talking about IV chelation in a clinic using EDTA or another chelator. It's most effective for the small veins. For the larger veins, as far as I know, IV hydrogen peroxide therapy is more effective for clearing the big veins. And those two, clinical IV therapies, those are pretty extreme. They're much more expensive than, your everyday supplement program, but it's a serious problem. If you have full-on buildup and your veins are clogged, small or large, those are the two major options that I would consider. But on my end, as a nutritional guider here, I would just get you on all 90 essential nutrients, initiate a vitamin C flush immediately. And depending on their budget, if they can't afford the IVs, we could use possibly oral hydrogen peroxide, and we could potentially use EDTA chelation. I'd really rather not myself. So if I could influence anybody, it would be to do the IVs and get on all 90 and use enough vitamin C during that process to help your body out, help clear it out, and also help clear out any debris and toxins and stuff that's unleashed when you start taking away that plaque. And so you don't want to do chelation too quickly. You don't want too much going into the blood.
Thank you for that. We've got a question here from Nadia. She's asking if you could share what the root cause of diabetes 1 and 2 is.
Type 1 is much more complicated because I separate type 1 into two types, true type 1 and then false type 1 or pseudo type 1. True type 1 is a birth defect and it's not reversible. The pancreas is incapable of producing enough insulin, or the beta cells are underdeveloped or something like that. So with true type 1, you'll often see it be diagnosed as a baby or all the way up to puberty, but usually not in adulthood. Well, actually never in adulthood. If it's true type 1, it's diagnosed during puberty or before, because that means you had enough capacity to produce enough insulin for the 4-year-old 40-pound body, but not for the 140-pound teenager, right? It's just, it wasn't able to produce enough. So you'll get diagnosed during puberty at the latest. That's true type 1. But then there's lots of false type 1 out there that's diagnosed way later in life. So for some other reason, not genetic, and clearly they were capable of producing enough insulin before, right? If you got diagnosed when you're 50 years old, that's fake type 1, that's pseudo type 1, because you clearly had enough insulin to get you through. Something else happened. Did the body attack itself, right? Autoimmune, possible, especially in presence of dairy proteins, cow dairy proteins. Why? Because milk has insulin in it, right? Milk has insulin in it. And so the proteins from cow milk are so similar to your own insulin that the theory goes that if you are dairy intolerant, which there's a massive amount of people who are dairy intolerant, and dairy consumption, by the way, cow milk consumption, the earlier it started, it is linked to a higher prevalence of type 1 diabetes. So we don't recommend giving children cow's milk. And frankly, adults don't need it either. Cow's milk is the most problematic milk. But all milk has insulin in it. And so it contains proteins that are very, very similar to your own proteins. And if they've gotten into the blood inappropriately, meaning they haven't been digested properly, that's the basis of a food intolerance, then your body can mobilize an immune response to them. And thus, again, the theory goes, now it can mobilize an immune response against your own insulin and therefore against your own beta cells, destroying your own beta cells. Now, there's several nutrients and herbs that have been shown to reverse beta cell damage and restore beta cell function. So that's why I call it fake type 1, because if beta cell function was, it had nothing to do with a birth defect, right? True type 1 birth defect, you don't have enough beta cells. If it happened for any other reason, that reason is almost certainly reversible. And cow's milk is near the top of the list of things to consider getting off of to restore function. And like I said, there's several options. I wouldn't use all of them at once, but there's several options, herbal options to promote beta cell function. And there's other theories as to why the beta cells can lose function. I'm not going to go into all of them. The primary one is the autoimmune. And whenever you hear autoimmune, you got to think leaky gut. You got to think food intolerance. And in this case, it already has been well established that cow's milk has a lot to do with it. So we've seen type 1, fake type 1s, pseudo type 1s. We've seen them either decrease their insulin massively or completely. And, that's somewhat of a long process to wean off of it. And you have to be very involved in that yourself because you have to monitor how you're doing very constantly. But diabetics will typically be used to that. And of course, you've got a lot of people who are diagnosed with type 1 after being type 2, right? So sometimes they call it type 3 or type 2.5. Or 1.5. They haven't landed on a name yet that everyone agrees with it. But when you have type 2, what happens is your body actually starts producing more insulin. You get hyperinsulinemia, they call it. Right? So you don't just have high blood sugar, but your body's smart, so it tries to compensate for that high blood sugar by releasing more insulin. Well, insulin itself is toxic, right? But that's the normal response when the body is under stress. Organs get larger. They tend to overproduce. Right? Think of goiter or enlarged heart, right? Enlarged heart is not a good thing. It's a sign of stress. And so there is one theory that can simply burn out the pancreas over time. I do not believe that theory. The theory that I believe is that as you have insulin resistance in the first place, caused by nutrient deficiencies and poor diet choices, especially with oxidized adulterated fats that are so ubiquitous in our diet, be one of the main reasons to start insulin resistance in the first place, on top of several mineral deficiencies. What happens is the body's not able to deal with that sugar, so it turns it into fat and it stuffs it into fat cells or adipose cells. Once those cells fill up, which doesn't take very long, it starts stuffing it into organs. This is how you get fatty liver, which is one of the main components of metabolic syndrome. Well, what nobody else talks about is that other organs get fatty too. Because the liver is just doing the best it can. It's like, okay, we've got too much sugar. We already put out more insulin. It's not working. It's still not working. What do? I got to take this sugar, stuff it into fat cells. Fat cells are full. What do I do? Stuff it into organs. Hey, this organ's full. What do I do? Stuff it into another organ. And the pancreas is one of those organs. You can have fatty pancreas. What's a fatty organ going to do? It's going to underperform, right? It's choked up. It can't perform properly anymore. So it's going to produce less digestive enzymes for you. And it's going to produce less insulin. That is the theory that I favor. And even though I've only briefly mentioned it, I believe type 2 is explained there as well. Type 2 is quite simple. Bad food choices and multiple nutrient deficiencies. You need tons of different nutrients to process insulin, process sugar, to create insulin, to use insulin. Lots of nutrients are involved. There's a few that stick out more important than others, and those are the ones that we boost when there is a blood sugar problem, whether it's type 1 or type 2. But like I said, with type 1, we'd get them off dairy too. See how that goes.
Ryan, you mentioned getting off the bad foods. Would you please clarify that for anybody that's new, listening for the first time today? What are the bad foods they should avoid if they're trying to reverse diabetes?
Well, the poor four, as we call them, is gluten, oil, fried, and fake. And I would say that gluten is the most common food intolerance out there. And that can cause autoimmune problems because it can cause leaky gut. So that whole situation where proteins are absorbed into the blood and the body mobilizes an immune response to it, that can happen from gluten too, because gluten causes the leaky gut, or can cause the leaky gut. Gluten, oil, fried, and fake. And oil and fried food, almost the same thing. That's your biggest source of inflammation in the modern world. I mentioned, especially with diabetes type 2, that the prevalence of adulterated fats, rancid fats, destroyed fats in our food supply is one of the primary reasons for chronic illness in general, but metabolic syndrome specifically. So it creates fat imbalances in the omegas. It can create deficiencies because these are degraded fats, so you're not getting all the nutritional value from them. And fake food. Fake food's pretty self-explanatory. It's processed foods. Basically anything in a box or a bag, it's all fake food, right? So you get rid of that, then you get rid of tons of different chemical antagonists, especially things like MSG and other food dyes and stuff like that, which can be very, very, very antagonistic and cause all kinds of food intolerance type of symptoms, right? That lady earlier with the herpes, those are the types of symptoms you can get from those food additives, especially MSG. Yeah, over-explain that a little bit. Gluten, oil, fried, and fake. You want to get rid of them no matter who you are, no matter what problem you have.
Thank you. One last question and we'll wrap up for the day. Lynn is asking, will the head to toe healing program help with sleep apnea? And if so, how?
Yeah, sleep apnea is another scam. Okay, this is a fun one. Apnea is a normal behavior for all mammals. All mammals normally stop breathing at night, and it doesn't wake them up. It doesn't cause oxygen deprivation or anything. And if you pay closer attention to yourself, you'll notice that you do it all the time during the day too. Right? Sleep doctors never bother to look at people during the day, I guess, because people stop breathing all the time, especially when they're stressed. Now, first of all, shallow breathing starts happening when you're stressed, but people stop. Pay attention to your own self when you go about your day. You'll notice it, no matter who you are. You'll notice that you stop breathing multiple times during the day, and it can be for quite long periods, especially if you're stressed about something. So at night, usually it's just a weight problem, to be honest, because usually they just lose weight and the so-called apnea gets better, they can sleep better, and the snoring tends to go away as well. Right, so snoring, there's several herbs that can help with that as well, but you need a bunch of nutrients for your muscle function. Right, so if people are having any kind of a muscle problem, and snoring's a muscle problem, most of the time the 90 essential nutrients will just fix that. But there is some herbal stuff that can help a lot with that as well. Yeah, it's fake because apnea is normal. It happens to all humans and it happens to all mammals. But if you're waking up coughing, wheezing, if you're waking up feeling like you just gasping for air, that's not apnea. It's a breathing problem or a sleep problem. It's a nervous system problem, right? So you need a bunch of nutrients for your nervous system. You need all the nutrients for your nervous system, basically. I would look at your other symptoms primarily. The sleep apnea doesn't tell me too much specifically because it's not a problem itself. It's a reflection of a metabolic problem. So chances are their other metabolic symptoms are going to be obvious. Almost always they're overweight. Not always, but almost always they're overweight, and significantly so. So it tends to be that as they lose the weight, they start sleeping better, they start breathing better, their blood pressure gets better, their blood cholesterol gets better, their blood sugar gets better, right? We all know this. Even the mainstream medical world knows that. They just don't know how to help you lose weight most of the time. So most of the time with these people, my primary focus is on fixing their metabolic markers and symptoms and losing weight, because usually it goes away.
Thank you for that. For those of you that are just popping in to listen to the live, or maybe you're watching a replay, if you're interested in head to toe healing and how you can get out of chronic pain or reverse chronic illness, go to drkevinreese.com, click on the book tab. These are the two books you want to start with, the red and the green book, to find out if head to toe healing is for you. And then if you're interested, click on the start button and it'll give you more information about the membership, and you can book a call with us, a free call. We'll talk to you about your conditions, what's going on, and answer all the questions you may have. So have a great rest of your day and week, and we will see you next week, same place and time, 2 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Thanks, guys. Stay healthy.